What happens when the people you trust most betray you? In this gripping story, a wealthy magnate faces imminent destruction, but finds unexpected salvation from someone nobody expected, a humble domestic assistant with a powerful vision. This episode delves deep into themes of intuition, betrayal, and redemption, compelling you to consider how a single moment can change the course of your life forever. Stay tuned, this is a story you won't want to miss. A magnate was deceived by his spouse and closest confidant. He stood on the precipice of losing everything he had meticulously constructed. His salvation came from the very individual they had all disregarded. A humble domestic assistant, possessing an inexplicable faculty, sir. I implore you, do not depart from this dwelling today. Chief Kunle halted. He had just stepped into the corridor, one hand adjusting his costly timepiece, the other grasping his car keys. But now obstructing his passage was the domestic assistant. She knelt on the frigid marble floor, her eyes crimson, hands pressed together, visibly trembling. What is the meaning of this? Kunle inquired softly. She looked up, her voice quivering. Please, sir, do not go. Something dreadful will befall you if you venture outside today. Kunle appeared perplexed. What are you speaking of? I had a vision, sir. Last night, you wore these very garments, you entered your vehicle, and never returned. There was gore everywhere. People were calling your name. Please, do not go. Kunle scrutinized her. The atmosphere in the room abruptly felt altered, still oppressive. This was not one of those ludicrous fantasies that elicited mirth. She genuinely seemed terrified. His mobile buzzed in his pocket. Mecca again. He was already tardy for the investors' assembly. Billions hinged on this transaction. Arise, Kunle commanded, his voice low. This is not the moment. Please, sir, she whispered, pressing her hands to the floor. I know I am merely a domestic helper, but I could not remain silent. If I allowed you to leave, and something occurred, I would never forgive myself. Just then heels clacked on the staircase. Madame Blessing descended slowly, her robe cinched tightly around her waist, her visage already adorned with mourning cosmetics. She paused upon seeing her on the floor. What exactly is transpiring here? She demanded frostily. She claims I should not exit the house. Kunle responded, his gaze fixed on her. Blessing descended further, folding her arms while she remained motionless. Madam, I experienced a very vivid vision. If he departs this residence today, he will not return alive. Blessing uttered a harsh laugh. This is precisely why I suggested we dismiss this girl. She has now transmuted into a soothsayer. Blessing. Kunle began. No, permit me to speak, she snapped. You have a momentous conference this morning. Capital is involved, agreements await, and now a domestic assistant is impeding you with preposterous visions. You must be jesting. She lowered her head further. I apologize, madam, but I had to voice it. Get out of the way. Blessing ordered. Kunle raised his hand. Wait. Blessing turned sharply. Wait for what? He remained silent, his eyes still upon her. There was something about her tone, something sincere. She wasn't stammering, she wasn't striving to impress anyone. She resembled someone who had just witnessed something unforgettable. Then it occurred, that sensation, that subdued premonition deep within his core. No clamor, no theatrics, just a potent intuition. If you venture outside today, you will rue the day. Kunle stepped backward. He walked languidly to the central table, dropping his car keys beside his phone. He turned away from the entrance. I am not going, she exhaled softly, still kneeling. Blessing's mouth dropped open. You're not what? I am not going, for God's sake, Kunle. I said I am not going. Kunle walked into the sitting area and settled down, his hands folded before him. He gazed at the marble floor, as though it held answers. Blessing shook her head in utter disbelief. You are permitting this girl to beguile you because of a mere vision. She is not beguiling me, he stated quietly. Something simply does not feel right. Blessing uttered an exasperated sound. She turned and ascended the stairs, muttering to herself. She slowly rose, wiping her face. She retrieved the cup of water she had left earlier on the table. Her hands still trembled, and Kunle, he sat there, in silence, pondering why his heart throbbed so rapidly, and why the apprehension in that girl's gaze felt more genuine than anything he had experienced in years. What he was oblivious to was that this was merely the genesis. Chief Kunle Adesagna was not merely affluent. He was revered. He did not pursue social media notoriety, no gratuitous clamor, no wild interviews or boisterous birthday celebrations. But in every real estate sphere across Nigeria, his designation carried authority. He possessed one of the most formidable property conglomerates in Lagos, named Pinnacle Property Limited. He managed it with his long-standing closest companion and commercial associate Amsha Okoro. Together, they had erected the enterprise from nothing, from the era of making calls From a solitary laptop in a minuscule stuffy office, to presently endorsing multi-billion Naira land agreements in Osborne and Moto Kunle, was the strategist Aimcha, was the showman Kunle was composed, and meticulous, a listener who could discern silence Aimcha, was charismatic and audacious a risk-taker, who invariably knew how to peddle a fantasy. People admired their camaraderie, the manner in which they functioned like kin, but only Kunle discerned that beyond the laughter, beyond the champagne flutes, beyond every agreement, they were fundamentally dissimilar. Nevertheless, the firm prospered, capital flowed, existence was agreeable. And then there was the domestic sphere. To the exterior world Kunle possessed everything. A comely spouse, blessing, slender, captivating, always radiating like a magazine cover, a contemporary manor in Aja with a gymnasium, no one utilized costly scented votives in every chamber, and an ample collection of designer footwear to establish a boutique. They constituted the ideal pair, always coordinating at nuptials, always grinning in anniversary photographs, always eliciting compliments such as "Divine Providence truly blessed you two, you are perfectly matched," but behind closed portals it was an alternate narrative. Kunle had wedded Blessing out of genuine affection. He had encountered her at an opulent furniture emporium in Eka. She had arrived to procure decorative cushions. He a novel armchair. She had inquired if navy blue harmonized with gray, and he had replied unhesitatingly. She had chuckled. He had solicited her contact details. The remainder transpired swiftly, but affection did not persist. By their second marital year, it was evident Blessing did not covet companionship. She coveted solace. She did not prepare meals. She did not cleanse. She desired no inquiries. She desired expanse. And she detested domestic assistance. In less than a year she had dismissed 6 all for analogous reasons. She drew the drapes too wide. She breathed too audibly. Whilst cleaning, she ambulated like a market vendor. Each instance Kunle would return dwelling to find a packed satchel and a novel appellation. He had attempted to remonstrate. Once, "I am not operating a scholastic institution," Blessing had retorted. "This is my abode. If I dislike an individual, they depart." So Kunle had ceased disputing. He had concentrated on occupation, on lucre, on repose. Then one Friday afternoon, the last domestic assistant had departed without forewarning. Kunle had returned from his duties to discover his repast frigid, and his attire unfolded. The sitting room was quiet. His spouse reposed in the spa chamber. Later that evening Blessing had announced, "I have procured a new one. She arrives tomorrow," and thus the domestic assistant entered the dwelling. Demure, petite, olivescent, her hair meticulously arranged in small braids. She wore a simple gown and flat footwear, no earrings, no histrionics. She greeted everyone appropriately and proceeded directly to her duties. Within hours, she had swept, mopped, sanitized the guest lavatory, and arranged the larder without solicitation. She solicited nothing, she disturbed nothing that was not hers. She moved like one who desired anonymity, but Kunle noted her not in an improper fashion, but in a curious manner. Because she was distinct, most domestic assistants excessively watched television. They idly chatted, they feigned industry. She did not. She awoke prior to daybreak. She pressed apparel, as though trained at a grand hotel. She cleansed the fenestrations, without being instructed. Even Blessing, who never commended anyone, conceded one night, "She is not as irritating as the previous ones." That was the highest commendation Kunle had ever heard from his spouse. Days elapsed, weeks elapsed. Kunle returned from his duties one evening to discover the dwelling immaculate. Food was warm, attire was folded, and tranquility reposed serenely across the sitting room. No one was shouting, no grievances, just calm. He observed her once, and mused. Finally someone who genuinely introduces repose into this dwelling. But what Kunle was oblivious to was that repose was never the rationale. She had been dispatched into his existence. Kunle sat in the living chamber, without uttering a syllable. His mobile lay on the table, his car keys beside it. The dwelling was silent save for the subdued hum of the air conditioning. He ought to have been at the office by now, shaking hands, endorsing agreements, smiling for Lensman. Instead, he sat motionless, gazing at nothing, feeling as though he had just evaded something inexplicable. His chest felt heavy. The tableau of the domestic assistant on her knees ceaselessly replayed in his mind, trembling, beseeching, weeping that if he stepped outside that morning, he would not return alive. Initially, it sounded outlandish, but now he could not dispel the sensation that something had truly awaited him beyond that portal. His mobile illuminated once more. Echa Kunle sighed, and answered fellow Aimcha's voice resonated sharply. What is transpiring? You failed to appear. The financiers are irate. I had to annul, Kunle stated quietly. Annul? What are you cognizant of? What was at stake today? This transaction, Kunle, this transaction was golden. I know, he replied, his voice flat. What is transpiring? Aimcha reiterated. Speak to me. Kunle hesitated. He knew not how to explicate it. He understood it not himself. But before he could respond, another incoming communication, the screen flashed. Office secretary, he froze. Hold on, he clicked over. Hello sir, her voice trembled. Joseph, your chauffeur, he has been involved in an incident. Kunle sat upright. What? Carter Bridge, a lorry lost control, struck your vehicle, the identical automobile you customarily utilize, it overturned. He is at the infirmary, he is unconscious. We assumed you were in the vehicle. Kunle slowly lowered the phone and stared at the floor. The precise automobile, the precise thoroughfare, the precise moment he was scheduled to depart. He remained unmoving, unspoken, simply sitting there, replaying the imagery in his intellect. What if he had not heeded? What if he had disregarded her? The silence in the dwelling abruptly felt deafening. The sound of footsteps interrupted his musings. Blessing appeared from the corridor, her robes still tied, her mobile in hand. So you are merely sitting here all day? She inquired. Kunle did not glance at her. There was an accident. She raised an eyebrow. All right. Joseph took the automobile. A lorry struck him. The vehicle is demolished. Her hand ceased its movement. Then, and you believe that signifies what I believe? If I had departed, I might not be present. She laughed brusquely. So now you are transforming this into a spiritual narrative. Accidents occur daily in Lagos. Kunle looked at her. You are not even astounded. Why should I be? You are standing here, are you not? He scrutinized her countenance. Serene, cold, no indication of apprehension, no indication of relief. It caused something to shift in his chest. I am retaining her, he declared. Blessing frowned. Retaining whom? The domestic assistant. She need not depart. She preserved my existence. She provoked needless dramatics. Blessing retorted. She possesses no right to instruct you where to proceed or what to execute. This is my abode, and I will not permit. This is my abode too. His voice was low but conclusive. Blessing froze. The chamber fell silent. She blinked, then turned slowly and walked away, leaving behind the aroma of perfume and strain. Kunle sat back down, his hands pressed together. He was not contemplating the domestic assistant. He was contemplating something profounder, something amiss. He possessed no substantiation yet, but he could sense it. Something in his existence was not as it seemed. The strain in the dwelling did not dissipate. If anything, it intensified with each passing day. Kunle spoke, less observed, more. He noted the way Blessing barely glanced at him, unless she was voicing a grievance. He noted how swiftly she altered the topic whenever the mishap arose. He noted how she evaded, perambulating past the domestic assistant, as though culpability dwelled in her shadow. But he articulated nothing, not yet. Instead, he commenced posing subtle inquiries. A few days subsequent to the mishap, something occurred. Kunle was in the dining area, perusing his tablet. Blessing had just stepped out to respond to a call. The domestic assistant entered to clear the plates. She articulated nothing initially, then quietly, just above a whisper, she uttered, Sir. Kunle looked up. She bent slightly, feigning the retrieval of a fallen serviette. Please do not endorse any documents this week. He frowned. Why? Her voice became even lower. I had another vision. This one was more distinct. I observed documents. You endorsed them. Not long thereafter, everything disintegrated. You forfeited your enterprise. Your accounts were frozen. There were law enforcement officers. You were in manacles. Kunle stiffened in his seat. She added, if you endorse any document this week, you will not only forfeit your capital, you may end up incarcerated for something you did not even commit. Before he could inquire further, Blessing re-entered. The domestic assistant collected the tray and departed quietly, but the words remained. They did not merely remain. They penetrated deeply. Kunle did not forget it. 2 days later, Aimcha visited the dwelling. He appeared in his customary boisterous fashion. Neat coiffure, fresh aroma, broad grin. My friend, he exclaimed, drawing Kunle into an embrace. Thank heavens you did not enter that vehicle. That incident was dreadful. Kunle offered a small smile. Allow me to conjecture. Aimcha continued, that domestic assistant is still present, the one who provided the premonition that morning. Kunle nodded. Aimcha chuckled. Friend, when did you commence heeding visions? I no longer disregard warnings, Kunle stated calmly. Aimcha raised an eyebrow, but did not press. Anyway, do not forget that the Dubai agreement is still viable. We merely require your endorsement. Kunle nodded. Transmit the instruments. Aimcha smiled. That is What I relish hearing, but later that night when the instruments arrived, and Kunle opened the folder, his body stiffened. Something was amiss. The figures appeared incorrect. The property valuation was lower than what they had initially deliberated. The foreign account listed on the payment paget was not one he recognized. Then he recollected. Please, do not endorse any documents. This week, you may end up incarcerated for something you did not even commit. Kunle did not endorse it. He closed the file and secured it in his receptacle. A discreet inquiry ensued. He contacted a friend in finance, and what they discovered was worse than anticipated. Amcha had been pilfering company funds into clandestine offshore accounts for over 2 years. Substantial sums concealed under fictitious project designations, all meticulously executed, as though one never intended to be apprehended. It was not merely treachery. It was felonious, and Kunle was not merely being betrayed in commerce. At home matters worsened. Blessing commenced attempting every maneuver to remove her from the dwelling. She is too comfortable, she declared one morning, slamming a drawer. Too quiet. I do not repose trust in her. Kunle did not look up. She is adept at her vocation. She is disrespectful. She is disciplined. Blessing folded her arms. She is departing. Kunle finally looked at her. She is remaining. Blessing's voice elevated. You are choosing a domestic assistant over me. I am choosing my tranquility. That night Blessing confined herself to the guest chamber. She paced in agitation, then retrieved her mobile, and called Amma. He answered, with a weary tone. What is it? I cannot endure this any longer, she declared, her voice cracking. I am stifling. What transpired now? He is still safeguarding that girl. He declined to dismiss her. She ceaselessly meddles with everything. She is merely a domestic assistant. No, she is not. She is a malediction. That girl is observing us. She is sabotaging the entire scheme. Amcha was silent. Blessing persisted. You instructed me to wed him. You stated that if I did we would find an entry appropriate a portion of the enterprise, access the capital. We have been contriving this for how many years, and we are still not there. We are not, she snapped. We have attempted everything. You even dispatched those lads that evening to ambush him on Papa Road. Do you recall? I recall. They were armed. Amma. They awaited for hours. And what transpired? He altered routes again. Because of her. Amcha exhaled. She telephoned him, instructed him to take an alternate path home. It is as though she invariably discerns every snare we set. He circumvents it. Blessing's voice dropped. I am fatigued. I abhor reciting here. I abhor feigning to be a spouse. I abhor sharing a bed with a man I do not cherish. You cherish me, Amcha stated quietly. Yes, she whispered, that is why I executed all of this, but it is consuming excessively long, it is disintegrating, and if something does not transpire soon, I am withdrawing. Saturday evening arrived tranquil and unhurried. Kunle was on the veranda perusing corporate reports on his tablet. Blessing entered the living chamber in a fitted travel gown, her scarf casually tied around her braids. Her nails were freshly manicured. She stood near the staircase, casually inspecting her mobile. I shall be departing tomorrow morning, she declared. Kunle did not look up. Where to? Ibadan. Father has not been feeling well. I need to ascertain his condition. He nodded slowly. All right, I should return Monday. Okay. She awaited further inquiries, perhaps an embrace, a safe journey. Anything, but Kunle merely returned to his display. Something about the silence disquieted her, but she smiled and walked away. Kunle remained unmoving. He exhibited no emotion, but internally, he had already initiated a communication. Follow her discreetly. Do not lose sight. Do not interfere. Simply transmit updates. The subsequent morning, she departed the dwelling at 7:15 a.m. Her handbag was designer. Her smile was gentle. She kissed Kunle lightly on the cheek and waved farewell. By 9:03 am, the initial update arrived. She did not proceed to Ibadan. She drove directly to Eka. She checked into a boutique establishment on Broad Street. Kunle read the message without moving. By 9:47 am, the second update arrived. Amcha cap, pulled low, dark spectacles, simple black shirt. He did not check in. He proceeded directly upstairs. Same chamber. Kunle scrutinized the photograph. Then he reclined slowly. No astonishment, no panic. The truth had already been pulsing in his chest for weeks. This was merely substantiation. They did not emerge throughout the day. By 6:20 p.m. Kunle arrived at the establishment in a dark vehicle. He did not inform his chauffeur why he needed not. He exited calmly, entered. The receptionist greeted him with a smile. He did not reciprocate the smile. Chamber 406, he declared. She hesitated. Are you? Kunle produced his wallet and deposited 2 substantial bundles of currency. I shall not tarry long. She swallowed hard and handed him the auxiliary key. He did not hasten, he did not rap, he opened the portal, and there they were. Blessing in a white dressing gown standing near the small bar, clutching a glass of vino. Amcha shirtless on the divan, perusing his mobile. They both looked up simultaneously, everything froze, the vino glass slipped slightly from Blessing's grasp. Amcha rose too swiftly. Kunle articulated not a word. He stepped inside, observed both of them one after the other, then gently closed the portal behind him. Blessing opened her mouth. Nothing emerged. Amcha attempted to form a smile. Fellow Kunle raised one hand. Do not. Blessing's lip trembled. Kunle, I can explicate, do not fabricate. Kunle stated quietly, not here. She looked at him like a stranger. You followed me, I ceased trusting you 2 months ago. He declared, his voice low. Clear now, I comprehend. Why? Amcha stepped forward. It is not what you surmise, it is precisely what I surmise, Kunle stated. And worse, there was a prolonged silence. Kunle turned to Blessing. You wedded me for this. Her eyes blazed. You never perceived me, you were invariably wedded to your enterprise, and you were invariably wedded to my financial account. He retorted. You and your commercial associate. Blessing winced. Kunle cast one final glance at both of them. I hope it was worthwhile. Then he turned, opened the portal, and departed. No clamor, no theatrics, just the silence of a man who had finally perceived everything he needed to perceive. That night, he returned dwelling, and sat in the study alone. He did not weep. He did not break. He initiated 2 communications, one to his legal counsel, the other to the company's financial officer, prepared divorce instruments, and commenced the process to acquire Amcha's shares. Immediately Kunle ate not for 2 days. The mansion was replete with furnishings, but devoid of repose. Every polished surface felt as though it mocked him. Every photograph on the partition reminded him of how foolish affection could be when bestowed upon prevaricators. He did not weep, he could not. The anguish came not with lacrimation, it came with silence, the kind that enshrouded his chest, and refused to release its hold. The female he designated spouse gone, the comrade he would have perished for dead to him, and the domestic assistant still present, sweeping corners, folding bed coverings, serving him sustenance. He barely sampled the day. The divorce instruments returned endorsed. He exhibited no reaction. Blessing did not even bother appearing. She dispatched her legal counsel. Inform him I assent to everything she had articulated. Just grant me my repose. Behind his back, after reposing beside him every night while conspiring his ruin, she desired repose. Kunle endorsed the instruments with steady hands, but the conflagration in his chest was an alternate narrative. He returned to the dwelling that night and sat alone in the gloom. The chandelier was illuminated, the drapes were drawn back, but the dwelling felt like a sarcophagus. He possessed everything, but nothing, and that was when she entered. She did not rap, she did not tiptoe. She entered the living chamber the way illumination enters gloom. Quietly, but impossible to disregard. I am departing tomorrow, she declared, her voice soft but resolute. Kunle looked up from the divan, his throat tightened. Why, he inquired. She did not blink. My assignment here is concluded. Kunle scrutinized her. Of all the individuals in his existence, this was the one who did not prevaricate, the one who perceived the snares, and did not remain silent, the one who imperiled her vocation, her solace, even her existence for him. You need not depart, he declared. And this time his voice cracked slightly. You are the sole individual who has not wounded me. I know, she stated gently, but I was not dispatched to remain, I was dispatched to preserve. Kunle rose slowly, walked over to her. His heart was heavy. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing emerged, so she articulated again. If you had endorsed that instrument, she declared quietly, you would have forfeited your enterprise, your reputation, your liberty. You would have gone to jail, while the individuals who contrived your demise perambulated freely and exchanged caresses over morning. Repast. His jaw clenched. She drew a deep breath. But you did not endorse, you remained. You heeded. That signifies you are prepared for what to commence anew, she declared, this time, with your faculties of perception unclouded. They scrutinized each other. Then she performed something peculiar. She smiled, not the kind of smile that bids farewell, but the kind that proclaims, you will be well. Live right, she declared, retreating towards the portal. Trust, slowly, cherish, cautiously, observe everyone. She turned, opened the portal, and just like that she was gone. Kunle stood in that doorway for a prolonged period, the wind brushing past him like a whisper. He did not pursue her, he did not weep, but deep within something was shattering and mending simultaneously. He walked back into the living chamber, picked up the frame of him, and Blessing on their wedding day scrutinized it for 5 seconds, then smashed it against the floor. The glass shattered just like the falsehood he bent Down picked up a fragment and looked at his own reflection in it. Cut bruised awakened, and for the first time in a prolonged period, he smiled not because everything was fine, but because the tempest was finally concluded, and he had endured it. It required a full year of silence, of commencing anew, of reconstructing an existence that had been engineered around treachery. Cunlay dedicated himself to Pinnacle Property Limited. He revitalized the enterprise from within, purged the corruption, supplanted every individual who had once bowed to Aim Shahi, inaugurated a novel branch in Abuja, engaged youthful intellects, refused inducements, eschewed dubious transactions, became the kind of man he wished he had been earlier, and with time the blemishes began to recede. He commenced perambulating once more, he commenced partaking of repasts with mirth, he even commenced smiling without compulsion, and when affection came knocking again, it came not clamorously, it came gently through a female he encountered at a charitable auction, who cared not for his lineage or his financial ledger. She cared for literary works, for progeny, for all the quiet matters. He did not hasten it, he did not declare it. But when he clasped her hand one evening, beneath the constellations, he knew this time it was genuine. Somewhere across the metropolis a small black vehicle drew up before a dwelling with fissured walls and strain in the atmosphere. She alighted attired in a simple gown and flat footwear, her hair meticulously arranged, her countenance composed. She rang the bell. A weary-looking female opened the portal, eyes swollen from days of lacrimation. The female appeared perplexed. Are you the legal counsel? No, she stated. I am the domestic assistant within that home. A consort was about to discard his conjugal bond because of a secretary who had enshrouded herself around his cosmos. The female comprehended the male, denied it. The marriage was perishing, but she had arrived, and wherever she entered falsehoods perished, and verity ascended. A solitary parent ascertains her missing consort, depleted their accounts prior to vanishing, and now the male who caused his disappearance approaches for her domicile and offspring, her final ultimatum. 3 diurnal periods, her unforeseen redeemer. A mysterious domestic assistant who discerns the imperceptible trap about to enclose. If you are just tuning into this conduit for the initial occasion, please subscribe to our conduit and grant this video an approbation. Additionally, share with your companions and kin. It signifies the cosmos to us. Mrs. Inozi Oku scrutinized the notice of eviction in her trembling hands. Final warning. 3 days asterisk. The terminology blurred as lacrimation filled her eyes. Outside precipitation pounded the tin roofing of her humble dwelling. It drowned out the sound of her 6-year-old offspring humming in the adjacent chamber. Merely 3 lunar cycles ago everything had been dissimilar, a loving consort, a comfortable abode, intentions for a second progeny. Then Daniel vanished, no forewarning, no valediction, just in vacant wardrobe and missing bank capital. The financial accounts were depleted, the enterprise collapsed, and now this concluding notice. Mama, I am hungry. Little Kioma called from the doorway, clutching her worn Ursine toy. Ngozi swiftly wiped her tears and forced a grin. I know, sweetheart, Mama will prepare something special soon. But the kitchen cupboards recounted an alternate narrative, nearly bare, and the last modicum of reserves had been expended on Kioma's scholastic fees. Last week, Ngozi kissed her offspring's brow. Go engage with Mr. Brownie. Mama needs to initiate some communications. As Kioma skipped away, Ngozi leaned against the mural and closed her eyes. She had contacted everyone, family, companions, erstwhile associates. Some were unable to assist. Most would not. Her mobile buzzed a message from her landlord. My forbearance is exhausted, either full remuneration, or you are expelled by Friday. She slid down the mural until she reached the flooring, her cranium in her hands. Deity, if you are present, she whispered, I require a marvel. What she was oblivious to was that marvels sometimes arrive knocking at the principal entrance. The subsequent morning, a gentle rap roused Ngozi from her agitated slumber on the divan. She had not even made it to bed. Kioma still reposed in the bedchamber. The rapping reoccurred, soft but steady. Ngozi tightened her wrapper around her waist and moved meticulously to the portal. Debt collectors did not customarily arrive this early, but these days nothing would astonish her. She opened the portal just enough to peek through. A youthful female stood there. Diminutive frame, olive skin, hair meticulously arranged in small braids, simple gown, flat footwear. Good morning, madam, the female stated. Her voice was gentle but clear. My designation is I overheard you might require assistance with domestic chores. Ngozi appeared perplexed. I believe there is an error. I did not solicit any domestic aid, Mrs. Aduni. At the marketplace, informed me you might require someone, she replied, her countenance unaltered. How did you know I have a daughter? Ngozi's grasp tightened. On the portal she smiled slightly. Mrs. Aduni mentioned it. Ngozi shook her cranium. I apologize, but I cannot afford aid presently. I am actually, her voice faltered. The ignominy of her predicament abruptly felt overwhelming. I comprehend, madam, she stated quietly, but sometimes the aid we require arrives when we least anticipate it. She glanced past Ngozi into the dwelling, then added, I do not require remuneration immediately. I merely require a place to reside for a while. I can labor for lodging until you are in a more favorable circumstance. Ngozi scrutinized the youthful female's visage. There was something in her eyes, something sincere, something that did not seem to harmonize with the simple function of a domestic assistant. Against her better judgment, Ngozi opened the portal wider. Come and we can deliberate it. What Ngozi did not discern was that when she crossed that threshold, everything was on the verge of alteration, and the enigma that enshrouded this demure domestic assistant had only just commenced. By evening, she had transmuted the humble dwelling. The flooring gleamed, the fenestrations sparkled, the kitchen was arranged, and somehow, though Ngozi could not ascertain how, there was a pot of jollof rice simmering on the range. It imbued the dwelling with a delectable aroma that had been absent for weeks. More astonishing was Kioma's response. The diminutive girl, who had been withdrawn and quiet since her progenitor departed, was now giggling. She was instructing her, a hand-clapping amusement, in the sitting room. Higher, higher, Kioma shrieked as her hands moved more rapidly. Ngozi watched from the doorway. A peculiar sensation settled in her chest. Relief mingled with bewilderment. In mere hours, this stranger had introduced more illumination into their abode than had existed in months. Later, after Kioma was nestled in bed, Ngozi discovered her folding laundry that had been accumulating for days. You did not have to execute all of this, Ngozi stated, settling at the small dining table. I still do not comprehend why you are assisting us, she continued, folding her movements precise and fluid. Everyone requires assistance sometimes, madam. Today it is you, tomorrow it might be me, but the sustenance. How did you? I had some reserves, she stated simply. It is inconsequential. Ngozi shook her cranium. I cannot assent to that. You cannot expend your capital on us, madam. She looked up, her eyes abruptly appearing intense. Some matters are more paramount than capital. The manner in which she uttered it caused Ngozi to fall silent. There was that sensation once more that she was not merely a domestic assistant seeking employment, that there was something more profound to her presence here. Just then Ngozi's mobile rang. She glanced at the screen and her abdomen tightened. The bank again. Excuse me, she mumbled, stepping into her bedchamber to receive the communication. Mrs. Oku, the stern voice commenced without salutation. This is the final admonition regarding your consort's loan. If remuneration is not received by Monday, we shall have no recourse. But to please, Ngozi interjected, her voice breaking, I have explicated the predicament. My consort departed. He took everything. I merely require more temporal duration. To the bank has been exceedingly forbearing, madam. But commerce is commerce. Monday is the deadline. The communication concluded swiftly. Ngozi sat on the edge of her bed, the mobile still clutched in her hand. The loan had been in Daniel's designation, but he had utilized their domicile as collateral, the domicile that already possessed an eviction notice. When she finally emerged from the bedchamber, she was awaiting with a cup of tea. Partake of this, madam, she stated softly. It will aid. Ngozi accepted the cup. She did not question how she seemed to discern precisely what she necessitated. Madam, she stated after a moment, do not proceed to that interview tomorrow. Ngozi nearly choked on her tea. What interview? The one with Chief Babatunde, the commercial proposition. The cup froze halfway to Ngozi's lips. How did you know about that? I did not inform anyone. Her eyes held her steadily. I observed the electronic mail on your mobile when you left it on the table earlier. I was not prying, madam. But I need to forewarn you that individual is not who he asserts himself to be. If you proceed to that assembly, you will forfeit what little you possess. Remaining a chill coursed through Ngozi. The assembly was her ultimate hope. Chief Babatunde had reached out 2 days ago. He claimed to be an old commercial acquaintance of Daniel. He stated he had a proposition that could aid her financial predicament. It had seemed like a lifeline. That is absurd, Ngozi stated, though her voice lacked conviction. Chief Babatunde is well respected. He possesses half the properties in Eke. He is also connected to your consort's disappearance. she stated quietly, and if you meet him alone, you will rue it. The cup clattered back onto its plate. What are you speaking of? How would you discern anything about my consort? She looked down at her hands, then back up at Ngozi. I know it sounds peculiar, madam, but sometimes I perceive matters. I experience visions. Last night, I envisioned you about this dwelling, about a male taking everything and vanishing, and about another male feigning to assist while contriving to take the remainder. Ngozi rose swiftly, the chair scraped loudly against the flooring. I believe you should depart now, madam, please, do not. This is preposterous. You appear at my portal discerning matters. You should not discern, you prepare sustenance. I cannot afford you narrate visions and admonitions. Ngozi's voice elevated with each word. I know not what genre of diversion you are enacting, but I desire you out of my dwelling. She did not dispute. She rose quietly, she gathered her humble satchel, and moved towards the portal. But before she departed, she turned the instrument. He will solicit you to endorse tomorrow, transfers proprietorship of this dwelling to his enterprise. He knows about the eviction. Notice he knows about the bank loan. He is counting on your desperation. Then she was gone. The portal, closing softly behind her, Ngozi stood frozen, in the center of the chamber, her heart pounding. How could she have discerned about the instrument? Chief Babatunde had mentioned it only in his private electronic mail. He stated it was a formality, that it would aid restructure her debt. She sank back into her chair. Doubt crept in for the initial occasion. What if she was correct? What if this assembly was a snare? Outside, the night had grown quiet, the precipitation had ceased, and somewhere in the gloom she walked away from another dwelling, another existence she had briefly touched, but the narrative was far from concluded. The subsequent morning arrived bright and clear, as if the previous day's tempest had cleansed everything. Ngozi proceeded through her morning routine, like an automaton, her intellect still replaying her admonitions. Mama, where is she? Kioma inquired over morning repast, pushing her cornflakes around the bowl. She had to depart, sweetheart, but she pledged to demonstrate how to craft paper avians today. Ngozi sighed. Sometimes individuals make pledges they cannot fulfill, like Daniel, like everyone who had stated they would assist, and then vanished when matters became arduous. After depositing Kioma at school, Ngozi sat in her vehicle. She scrutinized her mobile. Chief Babatunde's office had dispatched a reminder about the 11 a.m. assembly. The instrument would be ready for her endorsement. Her digit hovered over the message. Could she afford to disregard this prospect, based on the peculiar admonitions of a domestic assistant she had only encountered yesterday? But then again, could she afford not to? With a deep breath, she typed a rejoinder. Something has transpired. Can we reschedule for tomorrow, same time? The response arrived almost immediately. Regrettably, Chief Babatunde is journeying tomorrow. It must be today, perhaps later this afternoon. The urgency disquieted her. If this was a genuine commercial proposition, why the haste? I apologize, but today will not be feasible, she replied, her heart racing. As she pressed send this time, the response required more temporal duration. When it finally arrived, the tone had transmuted entirely. Mrs. Oku, perhaps you do not comprehend the prospect being presented. The chief is doing you a favor by even meeting with you. After the disarray your consort left, this offer expires today. A menace enshrouded in commercial parlance, her words echoed in her mind. He is counting on your desperation. Instead of replying, Ngozi put her mobile away and started the vehicle. There was someone else she necessitated to perceive. First, the marketplace was bustling, as invariably females disputed over tomatoes and peppers. Males transported ponderous sacks of rice and legumes. Children weaved through the throngs, running errands for their maternal figures. Mrs. Aduni's textile stall was at the distant extremity. You could recognize it by its vibrant anchor prints, suspended like colorful standards in the zephyr. Ah, the elder female called out when she spotted her. It has been excessively long. How is Kioma? She is well, thank you. Ngozi absently fingered a blue fabric. Mrs. Aduni, did you dispatch a domestic assistant to me yesterday? A youthful female named the textile seller's brow wrinkled. Domestic assistant? No, my dear, why would I do that without inquiring of you first? Ngozi's abdomen tight. She stated you informed her I necessitated aid. Mrs. Aduni shook her cranium firmly. I have not conversed with anyone about you, Ngozi. Not since she hesitated, not since Daniel departed. She knew about Kioma, she knew matters she should not have known. A look of solicitude crossed the elder female's visage. What genre of matters? Ngozi hesitated, then resolved to repose trust in her aged companion. She forewarned me about a commercial assembly I have today with Chief Babatunde. Mrs. Aduni's countenance transmuted instantaneously, her eyes widened, she glanced around swiftly, before pulling Ngozi closer. Heed me. She declared, her voice, barely above a whisper. Remain distant from that individual, his hands are not pure. What do you signify? There are rumors females, who endorsed agreements with him, believing they were preserving their enterprises. They ended up with nothing, some even ended up. She trailed off, but her countenance supplied the blank. And my consort, what about Daniel? Ngozi demanded. Mrs. Aduni appeared pained. I did not desire to be the one to inform you, but they were observed together the day prior to his disappearance. Disputing Daniel, appeared terrified. The cosmos seemed to tilt beneath Ngozi's feet. You are stating Chief Babatundai had something to do with Daniel departing. I am stating be cautious, my offspring. Exceedingly cautious, Ngozi drove, dwelling in a daze, her intellect racing. If what Mrs. Aduni had stated was veritable, if Chief Babatundai was somehow linked to Daniel's disappearance, then her admonition was not merely precise, it was potentially life-preserving. But how could she have discerned? And who was she truly? When she arrived dwelling, the abode felt vacant, without her subdued presence. It was peculiar how someone who had been present for less than a day could leave such a void. Ngozi scrutinized her mobile. Once more, 3 missed communications from Chief Babatundai's office. A text message. The chief is willing to come to you. He can be at your house by 4 p.m. He insists this matter cannot wait. A chill coursed down her spine. He knew where she resided just then. There was a rap at the portal. Ngozi froze. It was only 2 p.m. Too early for Kioma to be back from school. Too early for the chief's promised visit. The rapping reoccurred, more urgent this time. She moved meticulously to the portal and looked through the peephole. Her breath caught. It was her. When she opened the portal, the youthful female did not await an invitation. She stepped inside swiftly, her customary composed demeanor supplanted by urgency. You did not proceed to the assembly, she stated. It was not a query. Ngozi struggled to locate terminology. I conversed with Mrs. Aduni. She never dispatched you. She knows you not. She did not deny it. There is no temporal duration to explicate everything now. He is approaching here. How do you please, madam? Just heed. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a flash drive. Everything you necessitate to discern about Chief Babatundai is on this. His connection to your consort, the properties he seized, the females he has menaced. Ngozi scrutinized the small device. What am I presumed to execute with this? Take it to this address. She handed her a piece of paper. Solicit Detective Ibrahim. Inform him dispatched you. Detective, you desire me to proceed to the constabulary. Not just any constabulary. Detective Ibrahim has been constructing a case against Chief Babatundai. For months your substantiation could be what finally causes his downfall. Ngozi shook her cranium, overwhelmed. I do not comprehend any of this. Who are you? How do you discern these matters? For a moment, her resolute countenance softened. I am someone who was dispatched to assist, just as I assisted Kunle before you. Kunle, who is another rap at the portal. This one ponderous and demanding. Both females stiffened. Chief Babatundai. She whispered, he is early. Mrs. Oku, a deep voice called from outside. I know you are home. Your vehicle is in the driveway. Ngozi looked at her in panic. What do I execute? Exit the rear portal. Convey the flash drive to Detective Ibrahim now. But what about you? Do not concern yourself with me. This is not the initial occasion. I have confronted someone of his ilk. Mrs. Oku. The rapping transmuted into pounding. Open this portal immediately. Ngozi hesitated only a moment longer, then seized her car keys and the flash drive at the rear portal. She turned. Thank you, she whispered. She nodded once. Go. As Ngozi slipped out, she heard the front portal open, her voice clear and unwavering. Chief Babatundai, I have been expecting you. Detective Ibrahim's bureau was diminutive and disarranged. It was tucked away in a recess of the area command that seemed deliberately engineered to be overlooked. The individual himself corresponded to his environs. Unassuming, somewhat untidy, but with keen eyes that missed nothing. Dispatched you? He inquired, after Ngozi had introduced herself. His tone revealed nothing. Yes, she granted me this. Ngozi placed the flash drive on his desk. She stated it contains substantiation about Chief Babatundai, about what he has been perpetrating to females such as myself. The detective picked up the drive, he rotated it in his fingers. And this, he stated when she had concluded. Where is she now? A wave of culpability washed over Ngozi. In her haste to adhere to her instructions, she had left the youthful female alone with Chief Babatundai. She is at my dwelling with him. The detective rose swiftly. We need to proceed now. They arrived to discover 2 constabulary vehicles, already parked outside Ngozi's dwelling their lights. Flashing silently, officers stood on the lawn conversing in subdued tones. Detective Ibrahim flashed his badge and approached one of them. "What is the predicament?" Anonymous tip. The officer replied stated there was substantiation of swindling and intimidation transpiring at this address. "When we arrived, we discovered this." He handed Detective Ibrahim a folder. Inside were documents. Identical documents Chief Babatundai had desired Ngozi to endorse, but with marginal notes, revealing the genuine nature of the accord. Beside them were photographs of Chief Babatundai with Daniel, dated the day prior to his disappearance. "Where is Chief Babatundai now?" Detective Ibrahim inquired. "In custody. He was present when we arrived," vociferating at someone, a youthful female. Ngozi's heart raced. "Where is she?" The youthful female. The officer shook his cranium. "By the time we entered the dwelling, there was no female, just the chief, and these documents on the table. That is impossible." Ngozi insisted she was present. "Her designation is Detective Ibrahim," and the officer exchanged glances. "Mrs. Oku," Detective Ibrahim stated meticulously, "we searched the entire dwelling. There was no one else present." Later that night, after the constabulary had departed, after Kioma had been retrieved from a neighbor's abode and put to bed, Ngozi sat alone in her living chamber, striving to comprehend everything that had transpired. Chief Babatundai was in custody. The flash drive she had granted her contained sufficient substantiation to retain him there. Financial records displaying a pattern of swindling testimonies from other victims, even a recorded colloquy with Daniel, where menaces were clearly articulated. Detective Ibrahim had informed her that Daniel had likely fled the nation after his dealings with Chief Babatundai. When awry, the capital was probably irretrievable. But at least now, she knew the verity. More importantly, her abode was safe. The bank had communicated. They informed her that in light of the felonious inquiry, they would be restructuring the loan to more manageable stipulations. It was more than she could have anticipated merely 24 hours ago, and it was all because of her. But who was she, and where had she departed? The sound of light footsteps caused Ngozi to look up. Kioma stood in the doorway clutching her Ursine toy. "I had a vision, Mama," she declared sleepily. "Come here, sweetheart." Ngozi patted the divan beside her. "What did you dream about?" Kioma climbed up and nestled against her maternal figure. "I envisioned." She was smiling. Ngozi's heart skipped a beat. "What else?" She stated she had to depart to assist someone else now, but she stated we would be alright. Kioma yawned. She stated the angels are observing over us. Ngozi held her offspring close. A peculiar repose settled over her. She did not comprehend who or what she was, but she knew one matter for certain. Whatever nebulous forces had been circling her lineage, they had been vanquished by the subdued potency of a female who appeared just when she was most necessitated. Across the metropolis, in a neighborhood where despair permeated the atmosphere like a ponderous cloud, a male sat on his veranda, his cranium in his hands. Behind him, the sounds of disputation drifted through the open fenestration. His adolescent son was vociferating at his spouse, uttering menaces of departing, of adhering to the erroneous trajectory. The lineage was fragmenting, and the male knew not how to rectify it. A shadow fell across the veranda steps. He looked up. A youthful female stood there. Diminutive frame, olive skin, hair meticulously arranged in small braids, simple gown, flat footwear. "Good evening, sir," she declared. Her voice was gentle, but clear. "My designation is I overheard you might require some assistance around the dwelling." The male scrutinized her for a prolonged moment. There was something in her eyes, something sincere, something that did not seem to harmonize with the simple function of a domestic assistant. "Come in," he stated, finally stepping aside. "We could use some assistance around here." What he was oblivious to was that when she crossed that threshold, everything was on the verge of alteration, and the enigma that enshrouded this demure domestic assistant was only commencing to unravel. For she was not merely a domestic assistant, she was a guardian, a defender dispatched to those who necessitated her most just when they believed all expectation was relinquished, and her vocation was far from concluded. Tonight a paternal figure will eternally forfeit his offspring at the midnight hour. 17-year-old Kola must spill gore to affiliate with Lagos's most dreaded confederation, or have his own spilled instead. As the temporal duration dwindles, a mysterious domestic assistant appears with a shocking disclosure. This pertains not merely to a lost adolescent, it pertains to an imperceptible conflict for the spirits of youthful males across the metropolis. If you are just tuning into this conduit for the initial occasion, please subscribe to our conduit and grant this video an approbation. Additionally, share with your companions and kin. It signifies the cosmos to us. Mr. Soon Adabio sat on his veranda, steps his cranium in his hands. The sounds of another disputation drifted through the open fenestration behind him. I am finished with this. His 17-year-old son Kola vociferated at Soon's spouse. Mercy, you are not even my genuine maternal figure. Cease acting as though you possess any prerogative to instruct me what to execute. Kola, please. Mercy's voice trembled. I am merely concerned about what, that I am finally acquiring capital, that I possess companions who genuinely respect me. Something crashed inside the dwelling, probably another portrait frame. The third, this lunar cycle. Soon closed his eyes. He was excessively exhausted to intervene. Once more the disputations had transmuted into routine, since Kola commenced associating with Kingsley Okafor and his retinue. Kingsley, with his ostentatious conveyances and designer apparel. Kingsley, whose commercial prospects were transforming Soon's erstwhile obedient offspring into a stranger. Soon comprehended what Kingsley genuinely was. Everyone in Alamosho comprehended. A purveyor of illicit substances, a recruiter of youthful males, but comprehending and substantiating were dissimilar matters, and comprehending and convincing your adolescent offspring were worlds apart. The portal slammed behind him as Kola stormed out, his backpack slung over one shoulder. Where are you proceeding? Soon rose, locating his voice at last. It is almost 9. Kola did not even glance back out. You have scholastic attendance tomorrow. Perhaps I shall proceed, perhaps I shall not. Soon step forward. A flash of ire pierced through his exhaustion. Kola, his offspring, turned then, his eyes frigid in a manner that caused Soon's heart to ache. When had this transpired? When had his lad, his and Adonike's offspring, transmuted into this hardened youthful male? What? Dad Kola's voice was subdued now, which was somehow worse than the vociferation. What are you going to execute? Strike me, confine me. You can barely maintain this dwelling. You could not preserve maternal figure, and you cannot impede me. The terminology landed like corporeal blows. Soon stood frozen as his offspring walked away, vanishing into the gloom of their thoroughfare behind him. The principal entrance opened. Once more Mercy stepped out, eyes crimson from lacrimation. He did not intend it, she stated softly, but they both comprehended it was not veritable. Kola had intended every syllable. I am forfeiting him. Mercy. Soon's voice broke. Just as I forfeited Adonike. Mercy placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, but articulated nothing. What could she articulate? They both comprehended the verity. 5 years after malignant growth claimed his initial spouse, Soon was now observing helplessly as their sole offspring slipped away into a cosmos that would assuredly annihilate him. A movement across the thoroughfare caught Soon's eye. A figure standing in the shadows, observing. He tensed, pondering if it was one of Kingsley's lads monitoring Kola's abode. But as the figure stepped into the pool of illumination cast by the street lamp, he discerned it was a youthful female. Diminutive frame, olive skin, hair meticulously arranged in small braids, simple gown, flat footwear. She stood there for a moment, observing directly at him, then commenced perambulating towards their dwelling with purpose in her gait. Mercy tightened her grasp on Soon's shoulder. Who is that? Soon shook his cranium. I know not. The youthful female halted at the bottom of the veranda steps. Good evening, sir, she declared. Her voice was gentle, but clear. My designation is I overheard you might require some assistance around the dwelling. Soon frowned. Assistance? We did not solicit any domestic aid, Mrs. Yabo, at the marketplace mentioned you were seeking, she replied, her countenance unaltered. Mercy stepped forward. There must be an error. I never conversed with Mrs. Yabo about domestic aid. The youthful female's eyes remained steady. Sometimes aid arrives before we discern, we necessitate it. Something about her gaze caused Soon to pause. There was a profundity there, a comprehension that seemed out of place with her simple appearance. It is late, he stated. Perhaps you should return tomorrow. Tomorrow might be too late, she stated quietly. Soon felt a chill course through him. Too late for what? For your offspring? Mercy gasped softly. Soon stiffened. What do you discern about my offspring? Her countenance remained composed. I know he is perambulating a perilous trajectory. I know there are individuals drawing him away from you, and I know that after tonight it will be much more arduous to reclaim him. Soon stepped down until he was face to face with this peculiar youthful female. Who are you? How do you discern these matters? I am someone who was dispatched to assist, she stated simply. Will you permit me? Soon scrutinized her for a prolonged moment. There was something in Her eyes something sincere, something that did not seem to harmonize with the simple function of a domestic assistant. Behind him, Mercy whispered Soon. He made his volition come in, he stated, finally stepping aside. We could use some assistance around here. What he was oblivious to was that when she crossed that threshold everything was on the verge of alteration, and the enigma that enshrouded this demure domestic assistant was about to unveil itself in manners none of them could conceive. By morning, the dwelling felt altered. Soon awoke to the aroma of fresh akara and brewing infusion sounds he had not experienced since Adonai was alive. Mercy had attempted initially, but her culinary skills never quite measured up eventually. They had all settled for rapid morning repasts, consumed separately. On the way out the portal he discovered her, in the kitchen, moving with practiced efficacy, as though she had been laboring there for years, rather than hours. Good morning, sir, she stated without turning around. Breakfast will be prepared soon. You did not have to execute this, Soon stated. He was abruptly uncomfortable with the formality. And please call me Soon, she nodded, but did not respond. There was a quietness about her that made him curious. Not shy, not timid, but contained, like someone who bore much more within than she displayed. About last night, he commenced. What you stated about my offspring. Is Kola home? She interrupted, finally turning to face him. The query caught him unawares. I know not. He entered very late. Check his chamber, she stated, her voice gentle but firm now. Something in her tone caused him to move. He walked swiftly to Kola's bedchamber at the end of the hall and rapped lightly. When no rejoinder came, he opened the portal. The bed was vacant. Not slept in. Soon's heart sank. He returned to the kitchen, where she was now placing sustenance on the table. Mercy had joined her, appearing refreshed despite the previous night's lacrimation. He did not return home, Soon stated. Flatly, she nodded as if she had anticipated this. Sit, partake. We need to converse. As they partook, she spoke quietly, but clearly. Kola has been recruited by Kingsley Ockreer, not merely for trivial errands anymore. Tonight, they are planning to introduce him into the inner circle. Soon put down his fork. How could you possibly discern this? The initiation requires gore, she continued, disregarding his query. Not merely fealty, not merely violating the statute. Gore, Mercy gasped. What are you articulating? I am articulating that tonight Kingsley will solicit your offspring to injure someone to substantiate himself. And once that transpires, the trajectory back becomes much more arduous. Soon rose swiftly. I am contacting the constabulary. The constabulary cannot aid, she stated calmly. Not yet. There is no substantiation, no malefaction has been committed, and Kola will only be pushed further away. Then, what? Soon demanded, frustration and apprehension rendered his voice sharp. What am I presumed to execute? Merely await while my offspring transmutes into a felon, a murderer. She looked up at him. For a moment her eyes seemed to contain centuries of discernment. You need to contend for him, not against him. You need to remind him of who he genuinely is. And how do I execute that, when he will not even converse with me? With this she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small worn notebook. She placed it on the table. Soon recognized it instantaneously. His throat tightened. Where did you procure this? It was beneath his mattress, concealed, but not forgotten. Soon picked up the notebook with trembling hands. The leather covering was fissured. With age the pages were yellowed. Within, inscribed, in his late spouse's elegant calligraphy, were supplications, aspirations and fantasies for their offspring. Adonai had commenced it when she first learned she was pregnant. She continued inscribing in it until the day prior to her demise. I knew not he retained this. Soon whispered he peruses it when he believes no one is observing, she stated softly. When the enticement between two worlds becomes excessively potent. Mercy wiped a tear from her cheek. How do you discern these matters? She stood and commenced clearing the plates. Some matters cannot be explicated, only assented to. She turned to Soon. Kola will return home this afternoon to change prior to meeting Kingsley. That is your moment. Soon clutched the notebook to his chest. Hope and doubt warred within him. And if it does not function, if he still proceeds. Her countenance remained serene. Then, I will execute what I was dispatched to execute. The query of who had dispatched her hung in the atmosphere. Unanswered, the dwelling fell into a peculiar expectant silence. After morning repast, Mercy departed for her vocation at the infirmary. She kissed Soon on the cheek and whispered, possessed conviction. Soon strove to concentrate on his duties. Freelance accountancy he performed from home, since forfeiting his bank position 2 years ago, but his intellect ceaselessly drifted to his offspring and to the mysterious youthful female, now moving quietly through his dwelling, transforming it with each touch. By noon, The flooring gleamed, the fenestrations sparkled, even the garden long neglected had been weeded and tended. It was as if her presence was purging years of sorrow and neglect, revealing the home that once was. At 3:17 p.m., the principal gate creaked. Soon looked up from his portable computer to discern her standing in the doorway of his small office. He is present, she stated simply. Soon stood, his heart was pounding. The notebook lay on his desk, where he had been perusing it all day, discovering potency in Adonai's terminology. He picked it up and moved to the sitting room. Just as Kola walked through the principal entrance, his offspring froze when he discerned him, clearly not anticipating anyone to be home. Then his eyes shifted to her standing quietly in the corner. Who is this? He inquired, suspicion supplanting surprise. Novel domestic aid, new domestic assistant, Soon stated. He strove to maintain his voice casual. Since when do we necessitate domestic aid? Kola's eyes narrowed. Since your stepmother and I both labor, and you are. Soon hesitated, occupied with your own existence. Something flashed across Kola's visage, culpability perhaps, but it was swiftly supplanted by the rigid mask he had worn for months now. Whatever, I merely came to change. He started towards his chamber. Kola soon called after him, can we converse for a minute? I am in a hurry. It is paramount. Kola turned, impatience etched across his features. What? Soon held out the notebook. I discovered this. The alteration was instantaneous. Kola's countenance lost its color, his eyes widened then narrowed. Once more they darted between the notebook and his progenitor. You went through my possessions. His voice was low, perilous. No, Soon stated, honestly discovered it. While cleansing. Kola's gaze shot to the demure domestic assistant. She met his eyes without flinching. Something passed between them, a challenge, a recognition that Soon could not construe. Granite back, Kola demanded, reaching for the notebook. Soon held it just out of reach. I knew not you retained this all these years. It is none of your concern. She was my spouse. Kola, your maternal figure, that renders it my concern. You do not get to utilize her now. Kola spat. Not when you have expended 5 years striving to supplant her, feigning she never existed. The accusation struck Soon like a corporeal blow. Is that what you surmise, that I have been striving to obliterate her? Have you not, with your novel spouse, your novel existence progressing, while I am left with nothing but recollections? And this, he gestured at the notebook. I never progressed, Soon stated quietly. I merely discovered a manner to continue existing for you, because that is what she would have desired. Do not inform me what she would have desired. Kola vociferated, emotion finally fissured through his rigid exterior. You know not. You were not present when she caused me to pledge. Soon went still. Pledge what? Kola's eyes filled with tears. He refused to let fall, to attend to you, to be the patriarch of the abode, to fashion something of myself. He chuckled bitterly. Observe how well that transpired. Kola Soon stepped towards his offspring, but Kola backed away. Do not, just do not. He held out his hand. Grant me the notebook and permit me to depart. I cannot permit you to depart, Soon stated, his own eyes now swimming with tears. Not to Kingsley, not to what he is planning for you tonight. Kola froze. What are you articulating? I know, offspring, about the initiation, about what they desire you to execute. Fear supplanted ire in Kola's eyes. You know nothing. I know that this. Soon held up the notebook, is who you genuinely are, not whatever Kingsley is striving to transmute you into. For a moment, one precious moment, Soon discerned his offspring, once more the genuine Kola, not the hardened mask he had been wearing. Vulnerable, terrified, desperate to locate his trajectory. Then the moment elapsed. Kola's countenance closed off once more. Retain it, he stated coldly. I necessitate it no longer. He turned and walked to his chamber, slamming the portal behind him. Minutes later, he emerged wearing dissimilar apparel. He headed directly for the principal entrance, without a glance at his progenitor. Kola, please, Soon called after him. Whatever Kingsley has pledged you, it is not worth your spirit. His offspring paused at the portal. His hand was on the knob. For a second Soon surmised he might turn back, but then Kola shook his cranium. You do not comprehend, Dad, it is too late, and he was gone. Soon stood in the silent living room, the notebook clutched in his hands. Defeat washed over him in waves. He had failed, his offspring failed. Adonai, it is not too late. Her voice came from behind him. He had almost forgot she was present. He turned to her, ire abruptly ascending. How can you declare that you observed him? He has made his volition. He has not, she stated with subdued certainty. Not yet. And how would you discern? Soon demanded. Who are you truly? How do you discern? About Kingsley, about the initiation who dispatched you here. She met his gaze steadily. Someone who once stood where you stand now, someone who almost forfeited everything because they could not perceive what was directly before them. And what is that presumed to signify? It signifies, we need to proceed, she stated, moving towards the portal now. Before Kola reaches Kingsley's compound, proceed, where to execute what? She paused her hand on the portal to demonstrate to your offspring that some pledges are worth retaining, and some are worth severing. Without awaiting a response, she stepped outside despite his doubts, despite his fears. Soon found himself following her. Kingsley Ocksheffer's compound stood out in the neighborhood like a peacock among pigeons. Lofty walls topped with fractured glass, a black gate with gold embellishments, two muscular males standing guard outside, their visages emotionless beneath designer spectacles. Soon parked his aged Toyota a block away. Apprehension churned in his abdomen. This is lunacy, he muttered. We cannot merely enter there. She sat calmly in the passenger seat. She turned to him. Do you repose trust in me? I do not even know you, and yet you followed me here. Soon could not dispute that there was something about this female, this peculiar subdued domestic assistant, who had appeared on his doorstep with knowledge. She should not possess that compelled trust despite all logic. What is your strategy? He inquired finally. I am going to converse with Kingsley, she stated simply. Soon scrutinized her converse with him. The individual is a felon, a recruiter of lads like Kola. He does not merely converse with individuals who approach his gate, he will converse with me. Before Soon could protest further, she opened the car portal and stepped out with no recourse but to follow. Soon hastened after her. As they approached the compound, the guards straightened their hands, moving subtly towards the armament Soon knew they carried. Halt. One of them called out, this property is private. She did not slacken her pace. I am present to perceive Kingsley Ockeffer. The guards exchanged glances. No one perceives Mr. Ockeffer. Without an appointment, inform him, is present about Cunlay Adesagna. Soon shot her a bewildered look. Who was Cunlay Adesagna? But the designation clearly signified something to the guards. One of them immediately reached for his mobile. He turned away to speak in hushed tones. After a moment, he turned back, his eyes wide, with what looked like apprehension. Mr. Ockeffer will perceive you. The gate swung open, revealing a compound that resembled a small palace more than a home. Marble flooring, crystal chandeliers, art pieces that Soon, even with his limited knowledge, recognized as exceedingly valuable. They were led through a series of chambers, each more opulent than the last, until they reached a sunlit terrace, where a male sat alone at a glass table, sipping something amber from a crystal glass. Kingsley Ocksheffer was younger than Soon had anticipated, perhaps 35, comely, in a keen predatory manner. He wore a white linen suit that contrasted starkly with his dark skin. Gold gleamed at his wrists and neck. He looked up as they approached, his countenance exhibiting no astonishment, only mild interest. So he stated, his voice smooth as oil. You are, she nodded slightly. And you are the male striving to annihilate Soon Adabio's offspring. Kingsley's eyes shifted to Soon, as if noticing him for the initial occasion. Ah, the progenitor, he smiled, revealing perfect white dentition. Your lad possesses potential ambition. Unlike you. Soon's hands curled into fists at his sides. But she spoke before he could release him from tonight's commitment. Kingsley laughed, a sound like glass breaking. Release him? The lad came to me beseeched for a prospect to substantiate himself, to be something more than his progenitor's disillusionment. The words cut deeply, but Soon held his ground. Whatever you have pledged him, whatever you have informed him, it is based on falsehoods, is it? Kingsley raised an eyebrow. Observe, around Mr. Adabio, do I appear as though I am living a falsehood? Your offspring desires what I possess. Potency, deference, the aptitude to seize what he desires from this cosmos, instead of settling for remnants. At what cost? Soon demanded his liberty, his futurity, his spirit. Kingsley waved a dismissive hand, poetic, but meaningless. We all pay a price for triumph. And what price did you pay? Kingsley Ockreer, she inquired quietly. Or should I designate you Chindu Ockeffer, as you were recognized before you altered your identity? The smooth self-assurance on Kingsley's countenance faltered. Who are you? How do you discern that designation? I discern many matters, she stated. I know about the lad from the village who observed his progenitor toil himself to death for trifling sums, who swore he would never end up identically, who first pilfered, then defrauded, then injured others to extricate himself from indigence. Kingsley rose swiftly, his chair scraped against the marble guards. They will not come, she stated calmly. Not yet. What do you desire? Kingsley demanded, his composure fracturing. Capital. Is that it? I desire you to observe this male, she gestured to Soon. Truly observe him, and then yourself. He forfeited his spouse, nearly forfeited everything. But he did not resort to injuring others. he did not commence recruiting lads to execute his sordid deeds. And what did his nobility procure him? Kingsley sneered, a fractured home, a rebellious offspring, while I possess all this. Do you? She stepped closer to him. You repose with guards at your portal. You repose trust in no one. You alter your mobile weekly for apprehension of being tracked. Is that truly possessing everything? Something flickered in Kingsley's eyes, doubt perhaps, or a distant recollection. For a moment he appeared younger, more vulnerable, then the rigidity returned. Enough of this. He reached into his vest, soon tensed, anticipating a weapon. But instead Kingsley pulled out a mobile. You desire the lad? Fine, he is nothing exceptional anyway, plenty more. Where he originated. He dialed a number, spoke briefly, then hung up. There, your precious offspring has been released from his commitment. He fixed his gaze on her. Now, get out of my abode, before I alter my intellect. There is one more matter, she stated. The substantiation. Kingsley's eyes narrowed. What substantiation? The videos you recorded of the lads during their initiation, the ones you utilized to control them afterwards. Soon felt sick at the implication. Kingsley had been recording these youthful males, creating blackmail material to ensure their fealty. You are bluffing, Kingsley stated, but his voice lacked conviction. You could not possibly discern about that the identical manner I discern about Cunlay Adesagna, about the land agreement that nearly annihilated him, about your connection to Chief Babatunde, now reposing in a prison cell, because he underestimated someone like me. Kingsley's countenance went pallid. You are laboring with them, the constabulary. I labor for rectitude, she stated simply. Now the substantiation, all of it, or the next visitor to your compound, will not be as pacific as us. For a prolonged moment, the sole sound was the distant chirping of avians. Then Kingsley walked to a small safe concealed behind a painting. He opened it and removed a hard drive. Take it, he stated, tossing it onto the table, and do not return. As they walked out of the compound, hard drive in hand, Soon felt like he was moving through a vision. None of this made sense. Not her knowledge of Kingsley's past, not the criminal's sudden capitulation, not the mention of individuals and events Soon had never heard of. Who are you? He inquired again. As they reached the car, truly, she looked at him with those deep knowing eyes. Someone who was granted a second prospect, and now grants the identical to others. Before Soon could press further, his mobile rang. Mercy's designation flashed on the screen. Soon, her voice was breathless with excitement. Kola is home. He just walked in looking bewildered, but different, softer. Somehow relief washed over him in a wave so potent his knees nearly buckled. We are en route, he managed to state before hanging up. He turned to share the news with her, but she was already walking away down the thoroughfare instead of towards the car. Wait, he called after her. Where are you proceeding? She paused, looking back over her shoulder. My vocation here is concluded. But how will you reach home? At least permit me to convey you. A small smile touched her lips. I proceed where I am necessitated. Soon adabio. And directly you are necessitated at home, with your offspring. I do not comprehend any of this. He admitted. How you knew about Kingsley, about the initiation, how you convinced him to permit Kola to depart. Some matters are not intended to be comprehended, she stated, only assented to, as the benedictions they are. And, with that she turned and continued walking. Her diminutive figure grew smaller with each step. Soon watched until she vanished around a corner, then entered his vehicle, heart replete with inquiries, but also unexpectedly expectation. When Soon arrived home, he discovered Kola sitting at the dining table, a mug of tea cooling before him. Mercy stood by the stove, her countenance bright with cautious joy. Father and offspring looked at each other for a prolonged moment. Then Kola spoke, his voice small in a manner it had not been for months. I know not what transpired, Dad. I was heading to Kingsley's, determined to proceed with everything. But then he shook his cranium, as if striving to clear it. Something transmuted. It was like I could hear maternal figure's voice instructing me to turn around to return home. Soon sat down across from his offspring. He placed the notebook gently on the table between them. Your maternal figure invariably did possess a manner of communicating with you. Kola's eyes filled with tears that this time he let fall. I apologize, Dad, for everything, for what I stated about you not being present when maternal figure caused me to pledge the verity. Is she caused me to pledge to continue being the virtuous offspring she raised, to honor her recollection by living virtuously. He looked down at his hands. I fractured that pledge. No. Soon reached across the table, clasping his offspring's hand. You lost your trajectory for a while. That is all we all do sometimes. How did you discern? Kola inquired. About Kingsley, about what was supposed to transpire tonight. Soon contemplated her about her impossible knowledge, and subdued certainty about the manor doors opened for her, and hardened felons yielded to her terminology. Let us just state we had assistance from someone who perceives more clearly than most. Cola nodded slowly, the novel domestic assistant. There was something about her, something familiar, how I know, not just when she observed me, it was like she knew me, like she could perceive directly through all my ire to what was beneath. He paused. Where is she anyway? She had to depart soon, stated softly. Her vocation here was concluded later that night after Kola had gone to bed, reposing peacefully. For the initial occasion in months, Sune sat on the veranda steps with Mercy. They observed the constellations emerge in the darkening firmament. I still do not comprehend it, Mercy stated, her cranium resting on his shoulder. Any of it. Who she was, how she knew what she knew, I have been contemplating, that Sune stated slowly. Do you recall that news narrative a few months ago about a magnate real estate developer named Kunle Adesagna, how he narrowly escaped some genre of swindling scheme? Mercy nodded vaguely, something about his spouse and commercial associate betraying him. There were rumors that a domestic assistant had forewarned him, preserved him somehow. Sune looked up at the constellations, and then when we were at Kingsley's compound, she mentioned someone named Ninga, a female, who was almost beguiled into endorsing away her home. You surmise they are connected, that this individual moves from crisis to crisis, assisting individuals. I know not what to surmise, Sune admitted, except that whatever or whoever she is, I am grateful she discovered us. Mercy squeezed his hand. Perhaps she is an angel. Sune smiled at the simplicity of the notion. Perhaps, or perhaps she is merely someone who learned to perceive the verity when others cannot, someone who utilizes that faculty to assist those who necessitate it. Most they sat in comfortable silence, for a while, each lost in their own musings. Then Mercy spoke again, her voice thoughtful. You know, they state that those who have profoundly endured develop a genre of sight, that anguish, if we permit it, can open our eyes to matters others miss. You surmise that is what transpired to I know not, Mercy stated, but I do know that tomorrow I am proceeding to the marketplace to locate Mrs. Yabo to inquire if she genuinely did dispatch to us, and if not, to ascertain if anyone else has experienced a similar occurrence. Sune nodded. The enigma of her would likely remain unresolved, but the boon she had granted them, return of their offspring, from the brink of a gloom that might have entirely consumed him, that was genuine, that was sufficient. Inside the dwelling, Kola turned in his slumber. One hand was resting on the worn notebook he had placed on his bedside table, and as he dreamed, a sense of repose washed over him, a sensation of being observed, overprotected, not merely by his progenitor and stepmother, not merely by the recollection of his maternal figure, but by something more, something that moved through the cosmos like a subdued breath, touching existences at their breaking points and transforming them eternally. Across the metropolis, a weary female sat at a bus terminal. Her few possessions were packed in a small satchel. Beside her, she wore a simple gown and flat footwear. Her hair was meticulously arranged in small braids. Her countenance was composed and serene despite the lateness of the hour. A bus pulled up its portals, hissed open. The chauffeur looked at her curiously. Where to, miss? She smiled slightly. Wherever I am necessitated. Next, the chauffeur nodded, as if this was a perfectly reasonable destination. She boarded the bus. She took a seat by the fenestration. As the vehicle pulled away, she gazed out at the city lights. Her reflection in the glass overlaid the cosmos beyond. In that reflection, just for a moment, something shifted, a suggestion of illumination around her form, a profundity in her eyes that spoke of discernment beyond her years. Then it was gone, and she was simply a youthful female on a late-night bus, heading towards her next assignment, for she was not merely a domestic assistant, she was a seer of verities, a mender of existences, dispatched to those who necessitated her most, just when they believed all expectation was relinquished, and her vocation would persist as long as there were fractured cores to mend and lost spirits to guide home. If you relished this narrative, I am certain you will relish the subsequent one displaying on your screen directly. Please click on the thumbnail to observe the next narrative. I would appreciate your succor. Approve this video, share it with your kin and companions, and subscribe to my conduit. Perceive you in my next narrative. What do you think about the role of intuition in making decisions? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more fascinating stories.